show that they, of course, are great leaders. There are women who are doing amazing, and we do hope that the world can rally around to support more women in politics. This morning, we're also joined by Dakwa Adegboye, who brings us breakfast headlines. Good morning, Dakwa.
Good morning, Olive. Good morning, Osar. What a beautiful time to be alive. I want to pick up from where you stopped. You talked about the first presidential female candidate in Zimbabwe. I mean, we are beginning to see women. This is not the first time they will break the glass ceiling when it comes to politics. And maybe, just maybe, we might just see a turn of events. But it's a good ride for Zimbabwe anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. But anyway, some of these things will come up, later today as we go on with the show this morning. But let's share with you what our top stories are this Thursday morning.
South Africa is processing new school laws. What these laws are, you'll find out shortly.
And also this morning, Zimbabwe registers only female presidential candidates. Let's see how far she will go.
And Nigerians react as fuel prices rise. Of course, that's affecting the price of everything as well.
With fears that, of course, will continue rising. We're also going to look at the CJID's as it hosts Journalism Innovation Conference.
And the world of sports, Gombe United manager Zubair departs club after 4 years. These stories and more on Breakfast Central.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
On Digi 360, we give you a complete dose of everything.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it. Use it to take action. Digi 360, dissecting the issues.
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines. My name is Dakwa Adegboye. We begin in southern Africa, where the government says Russia's President Vladimir Putin will not attend the BRICS summit being held in August, and in months of speculation over his attendance. An arrest warrant has been issued against Putin by the International Criminal Court, ICC, for alleged war crimes in Ukraine. South Africa is an ICC signatory and would be obliged to arrest Putin if he goes there. But South Africa and Russia are members of the BRICS organization, and South Africa has remained neutral on the conflict in Ukraine, putting the country in an awkward position.
President Ramaphosa has, over the last couple of months and weeks, held several consultations on South Africa's hosting of the BRICS summit next month. The summit will be attended by the leaders of Brazil, China, India, and South Africa. By mutual agreement between all BRICS member states, President Putin will not be attending the summit. However, Russia will be represented by its foreign minister, Minister Lavrov.
Staying in South Africa, there's been a massive gas explosion in the Johannesburg Central Business District, causing substantial damage to nearby roads and resulting in sinkholes. Videos shared on social media showed cars toppled along Johannesburg Bree Street. According to an alert sent by the Drug Joint Operating Committee in Alexandra, Midrand, Sandringham and Santon, the explosion took place at about 5:46 p.m. local time and was possibly caused by the gas lines running underground. In neighboring Namibia, lawmakers have approved legislation to ban same-sex marriage and punish its supporters in what critics say is an unconstitutional attack on the LGBTQ community. The bill seeks to reverse a Supreme Court ruling that allowed for the recognition of some unions contracted abroad. On Wednesday, the legislation sailed through the upper house of Parliament, encountering no opposition. The law defines marriage as a union between persons of the opposite sex and spouse as one half of a legal union between a genetically born man and a genetically born woman. It says same-sex marriages contracted abroad are not to be recognized in Namibia. Labor unions in Africa's largest crude oil producer are outraged over the hike in the price of fuel across Nigeria and have threatened to withdraw from negotiation with the government unless prices are reversed. The Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress are accusing the government of taking from the poor to pay the rich and unleashing suffering, hardship and sorrow on Nigerians. Petrol prices hit the highest point ever on Tuesday at over 600 naira per litre. In the meantime, the College of Education Academic Staff Union has directed its members to go to work twice a week in view of the current hike in petroleum prices occasioned by the removal of fuel subsidy. President of the union, Smack Olugbeko, in a statement on Wednesday, says union members could no longer survive on the current minimum wage. He says the directive followed the union's extraordinary meeting held on Tuesday. Olugbeko says members of the union would not return to full work till the federal government agrees to their demands of 200% increase in salary. And of course, that wraps up the news at this time. Back to you in the studio, Olive and Osa.
Thank you very much, Dapo, for bringing us breakfast headlines. So much is happening. Namibia, it's interesting to see that they've also taken a stance against the LGBT. One would have wondered if they would have leaned in favor because of South Africa and how South Africa feels towards it, and because it's still in the South. But it's interesting to see that, and I'm sure that there'll be more developments on that story as we proceed.
I mean, definitely we would see a subsequent development. We know that in Uganda they have a strong stance too against the LGBTQ community there too. So I think for Africa, right, it depends on the country. So many countries prefer to stay rooted in culture, in what is perceived to be nature's natural order of things. Well, that's according to their stance, but maybe time will tell. We'll just wait and see.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Dak. We'll see you around.
Thank you for having me.
Now let's take you through the newspapers and see what the front pages are saying. We begin in the east of the Star newspaper in Kenya has to say. And on the front page of the Star newspaper this morning, the big story says, "Stand still, Raila aides arrested, chaos reign." Businesses paralyzed across the country as police engage protesters on day one of the 3-day demos. 5 civilians shot as police arrest ODM leaders. This has now become something that has spiraled out of control. It no longer looks like just mindless, I won't say mindless, bickering and fighting between the two political leaders, because lives are being lost, people are being caught in the crossfire. And now it's becoming, it's wild to see here. There's a picture of a teenager injured by tear gas canister, and he's being helped during the anti-government demonstrations yesterday. And on the right, you can see a protester jumping over a fire during Azimio protest demonstrations in the Express, Mombasa County. Still on the front page, we have Foreign Affairs CS Mutua blast United Nations over death counts.
All right. This is basically the biggest thing happening in Kenya. Right now it is the protest. I also saw international media reporters present in Kenya to, of course, give a live report on what's going on over there. And, it's once again a call for calm and a call for peace. And, this is on both sides, both on the government side and, of course, on the protester side. And every life that is lost, I keep saying it, that every life that is lost here is going to be, I personally would see that it's going to be blamed on two persons. And of course, two persons. It's either William Ruto or Raila Odinga. They're the ones getting these people out in the streets to either protest or defend, the government. And none of them, neither Raila Odinga or William Ruto is going to be standing in the streets protesting. But of course, the young Kenyans are. So, it's a call for peace and calm in Kenya. But let's move away from Kenya, go to Nigeria this morning, see what's on the Daily Trust, and see what we can find. It says here, Ganduje tipped as APC's national chairman. Of course, he's the former governor of Kano State. Tinubu Shatima hosts ex-governor Uzodinma, two others. Progressives governors back move, also announcement to be made soon. Jubilation in Kano APC. Not sure why. Also on the Daily Trust this morning, villages adopt new rice maize production methods to combat flood. NEPC targets $5 billion earnings from services export, and also bandits flee as over 100 soldiers storm Kaduna forest. We can also find here more knocks for federal government over petrol price increase. Don't take Nigerians' patience for granted, Sislak saying. But that's the thing, Nigerians' patience, and over time, we've gotten to see that Nigerians are the most patient people in the world. Yes. Nigerians, the patience they're saying don't take for granted has an elastic limit that is forever.
I agree.
I don't know what the scientific word is for elasticity that just doesn't break. It's like okra. Okay, okra even breaks, or that definitely breaks at some point. But I don't know. That's the elasticity of Nigerians' patience.
It's like we keep pushing Nigerians to the wall, and they keep making room further behind.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, don't feel bad, because President Tinubu says prosperity is coming after this temporary pain.
Yeah.
Reps rejects call to reverse increment, and also PMS price hike provocation and an invitation to crisis, says the PDP. Also on the Daily Trust this morning, Nigeria heading towards debt overhang, says NECA. And Tinubu returns NEDC board members, management replaced by Buhari. These are the stories on the Daily Trust this morning. I'm not sure how many people also got to see yesterday the video that was posted by the current Senate President, Godswill Akpabio. While of course, these days they do a little bit more social media than, we used to do maybe governments ago, in 1999 and the likes. There wasn't a lot of social media there in government.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
These days you see government officials making skits. You see government officials making, social media clips, of their day-to-day activities, hiring social media managers and cameramen and all of that, and you see a short, 1 minute clip, basically, the way, you make reels,
yes,
of a governor.
A vlog
exactly.
A day in the life of the governor.
Of the car that they're driving, their security aids while they're walking to the office, and he captioned it, I think, resuming work at the same. I can't remember what the caption was, but something that Nigerians picked out, with that video was he was wearing the same cap that the president wears, the cap with the sign, the insignia on it. I don't know what it's called.
The infinity.
Yeah, that signal, exactly.
Logo.
So, and that was being worn by the Senate President of Nigeria. And so it raised a lot of, eyebrows and red flags, because people remember that the 9th Senate was heavily criticized as being, one of the most rubber stamp national assemblies that we've ever experienced in Nigeria. And so there were fears that, hope this new National Assembly will not be the same thing. But when the Senate President is wearing the same cap that the President is wearing, basically wearing the President's insignia on his, on his head, isn't that already a clear sign that you are in for a, pure or undiluted rubber stamp 10th National Assembly? That's what it almost means. I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, we get into that conversation. But that's all we're sharing on the Daily Trust. Let's go to the Daily Times this morning.
Let's see if we have more joyful stories. Well, it would seem not. Fuel price hike. Reps summon NNPCL boss and marketers. Suspend probe airports concession nationwide. House motion indicts Buhari government. Sales have reduced by 50%. Reduce fuel price. Save us. Marketers beg Tinubu. 100 women to get political appointments in Niger before weekend. Amotekun nabs 80-year-old, another elderly man for alleged vandalism. And final story, remain faithful to your constituents. First Lady counsels female National Assembly members. That's all the story we can take this morning on the Daily Times, and that's all the newspapers we're reviewing. We'll go on a break. When we come back, we'll be looking into our top stories this morning on Breakfast Central. Please stay with us on all social media platforms at News Central TV.
You wake up to a lot of stories about Africa.
But this is where you get the story straight.
Where we explore different angles because we understand our stories.
There's that passion when it's your perspective and not a distant perception.
I know you hear it a lot, but it's true. Nobody can tell your story better than you.
That's what we do.
All day, every day,
on News Central TV.
Our African stories by Africans for Africans.
As reporters, we don't gather news stories. We experience them daily. So join us on Report Desk Africa as we share these experiences and review the top African stories. Only on News Central.
Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. We start in South Africa, where the country is one step closer to processing a controversial new education law that could see parents who fail to enroll their children in school jailed for up to 12 months. The Education Committee in the country's parliament last week said it has completed all public consultations for the new Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill, better known as the Bella Bill, and will now process the feedback to bring the laws ahead.
Among the other changes, the bill proposes is for provincial governments to be able to change both language and admission policies at a school without title input or without input from the school. The bill has been met with such anxiety from parents who are concerned about their children's schooling with the new legislation. Joining us this morning to discuss this further is Catherine Sutherland, a legal researcher at Equal Education Law Center, an organization that advocates for quality and equality in the South African education system. Good morning, Catherine. Thank you very much for joining us. Let's get into the conversation this morning. What exactly is the main purpose of the Basic Education Laws Amendment Bill? And talk to us about some of the key provisions that this bill contains.
Thanks so much for having me. So the larger purpose of this bill is to bring education law in line with developments that have happened in the last 10 years. So this is the first time that education law is being amended in 10 years. And since then, there's been a lot of amendment of the law through case law, and essentially that's not reflected in legislation. So that's one of the main purposes. Other than that, we kind of see at this point we have a very under-resourced basic education sector, and this is sort of the moment where we're looking at the context in which our basic education laws arrived and how they were developed in the context of moving from apartheid and making sure that people were comfortable with the powers of school governing bodies in comparison to provincial education departments. But now, as we are about almost 30 years later, we haven't seen any of that change, and a lot of the original laws were fairly compromised. So trying to essentially make sure that we clarify the roles of the school governing body and the provincial education departments so that we can use the limited resources that we have in the most effective and equitable way possible is, I think, in my personal opinion, one of the fundamental points of this bill. But obviously the bill is contentious because it does some fantastic things and it does some really concerning things. So on behalf of Equal Education Law Centre, the provisions that we're concerned with are there's a provision that establishes intergovernmental committees that has to, essentially when a learner doesn't have documentation, they're allowed to be admitted into school, but the intergovernmental committee will then supposedly help them get documentation. But this sounds great in theory, but there's many reasons why learners can't get documentation, and it's very rarely for, just because they just don't want to. So the fact that we have departments such as the South African Police Service and Home Affairs and the Department of Labour on these intergovernmental committees seems like these committees are being used for immigration control rather than to assist learners. Another provision that we're concerned about is the selling of alcohol in schools, or the limited selling of alcohol in schools during school events. In theory, it would be a nice way to make sure that schools can fundraise for themselves, but in practice, our sister organization, Equal Education, has learner members, and many of them have shown concerns about being around adults who are inebriated, and also the ability for learners to access that alcohol. And so those are the main.
Yeah, but there are other things that are being mentioned. Maybe it is the way that the picture has been painted there. The proposed changes, of course, have been met with, some unhappiness. And I'll share one, and that is that the school governing bodies that currently manage schools will have a reduced role. People are complaining about that. Someone even described it as the government trying to take, a full control of how the kids in South Africa are managed and take that away from the parents and the schools. So can you put some clarity as to what exactly that means and why there's such a pushback?
So the Bella Bill says that HODs have to sign off on language policies and have the final say with regard to school admissions. With regard to language policies, what we're seeing happen very often is we have under-resourced schools that are filled to the brim, and next to those under-resourced schools are schools that are teaching in single medium, so in only Afrikaans. And that language policy essentially culminates to being sort of a gatekeeping mechanism for former Model C schools and well-resourced schools, because they're using public resources, but we want to basically save home language teaching. It's really important that learners are able to learn in their home language, but at the same time, we need to make sure that we're using public resources effectively and equitably. So that's one of the things that the HOD will need to consider, and the need to safeguard home language teaching is also a thing that they would need to consider. So it's about balancing both of those things. And in our opinion, that particular provision does not infringe upon the rights of school governing bodies. We're looking at the larger good for the larger, school community and under-resourced learners. And we're saying, you have the right to teach in your home language, but at the same time, we can make sure also that learners have a place in school. In terms of school admissions, one of the important things there is that the HOD does have the final say, but at the same time, school governing bodies have the right to appeal that process. And so it's really clarifying those roles rather than, taking power irrationally away from school governing bodies. And I think it really strikes a good balance in terms of acknowledging the importance of school governing bodies, in terms of, saying that school governing bodies that have representatives from learners, from parents, from teachers, and school community members have a really important role to play. But it is, we do have to take into account the effective use of resources and to make sure that every single learner has a place in school, because currently that is just not the case.
All right, let's talk about one of the problems that this bill is seeking to solve, which is to ensure that parents who do not register their children in school could be jailed for up to 12 months. Now, the South Africa public education system has come under criticism for basically the quality of education it offers, and it's offered in the past years, I would say. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges that the South Africa public education system is facing?
So first, just to touch on that particular provision, we see an increase in criminalization generally throughout the bill, which is extremely concerning because it's absolutely not in the best interest of the learner to have their parent or primary caregiver put in prison or fined substantially. We've seen many examples of parents refusing to let their learners go to school for very good reason. Just one of those reasons could be the fact that their learners have to go to schools that have incredibly unsafe infrastructure that puts the lives of learners in danger every single day. So in terms of that, it's not unreasonable for a parent to refuse to let their child go to that kind of school. In terms of the main issues that we're facing in South Africa, we really have a tale of two systems. The inequality within the basic education sector is enormous. The type of schooling that well-resourced school provides in comparison to an under-resourced school is, and we see the impact of that drastically. So we had the PIRLS results recently, which is an international test that benchmarks literacy rates, and the results of that for South Africa was that I think it was about 81% of learners in grade 4 can't read for meaning. There's overcrowding, infrastructure is dilapidated, it's either not there or it's not maintained. We have a fantastic school nutrition program that we have seen not fairly frequently, but quite often learners aren't actually accessing that. Learners have the right to access scholar transport, and they very often aren't able to do that. So I mean, when we're talking about the issues that under-resourced schools are facing, very often the list is sort of limitless.
I mean, but is a 12-month jail time, a reasonable punishment, for not sending your child to school or not registering your child in school?
No, absolutely not. So just aside from the fact that, jail time and criminalization is, well known and well documented to really not stop things from happening, not prevent things from happening, we're not actually tackling the reasons behind the fact that that parents aren't sending their learners to school. So it's really quite unreasonable, and to leave a learner without their parent for 12 months is just quite shocking. The fact that seems like an appropriate way to make sure that learners are in school.
Okay, well.
And also, I think as we wrap up the conversation, let's find out exactly what this bill means for those who choose homeschooling or those who are doing distant education. So that's one of the ways in which this bill really just confirms what's already in the law. It does, elaborate on it a bit, but when we speak about homeschooling, everyone has the right to choose whether to send their child to public school, homeschooling, or private school. And it's about protecting that right, but also making sure that learners are accessing quality basic education no matter where they are. So the bill really just reiterates the fact that it's necessary for parents who want to homeschool their children to register and to make sure that to allow the HOD and Provincial Education Department to make sure that they're delivering quality basic education. Catherine Sutherland, thank you so much for your time with us this morning. We do hope that there's more clarity as to this bill, and that at the end of the day, what's best for the education sector in South Africa is what is being done.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
All right. Let's move away from South Africa and come back to Nigeria, where the Labour Party presidential candidate at the February 25th election, Peter Obi, has condoled with the government and the people of Plateau State, north-central Nigeria, over the incessant attacks in some local government areas of the state. Obi was at the government house on Wednesday, where he paid a courtesy call on Governor Caleb Mutfwang. Chizoba Anyonwe was there and has the details.
The Labour Party's presidential candidate arrived with a few persons and then joined by party officials.
In a couple of seconds ago, His Excellency the Executive Governor.
To him, the insecurity in Mangu and some other areas in the state leaves a bitter taste in the mouth, hence the need to identify with internally displaced persons and extend some support. The visit coincides with Peter Obi's birthday, but for him, there is little to celebrate in Nigeria because of the economic downturn, in addition with pockets of insecurities in some areas of the country.
So we're here to show our own sympathy, show our own support for everything, and I assure you, we are part of this family, and we want to be part of it. Thank the good people of Plateau State, those in Jos. Be rest assured, this is home for me, and I believe that we will all do everything possible to make it home. Thank you, Your Excellency.
Governor Caleb Mutfwang, who appreciated Peter Obi's visit, regretted the unwarranted carnage in some parts of the state and reassured an end to the attacks, which he said are linked to some ulterior motives.
Appreciate you for having this thought in mind and coming to be able to share in the affliction that has come upon us. Indeed, Mangu particularly has been in the news because it was one of the most peaceful local governments, and sometimes you cannot but link it to some other ulterior motives. But whatever it is, we know that the loss of one life is painful, but to lose at the last count in the last 2-3 months about 300 plus is a national disaster. And all we are asking is that this carnage must stop.
From here, Mr. Obi headed to Mangu, where he was received by the traditional ruler of the community in his palace.
We cannot thank you enough for this show of love. You have demonstrated that without passion to those that are destroyed for no further. You are so passionate that you are a man of God who takes care for humanity. You have shown that you are always there for the distress. Your Excellency, your visit to the government area has been a blessing to us.
100 bags of rice and a check of 5 million naira was presented to the internally displaced persons who altogether lost about 56 communities to their attackers, leaving them homeless. Chizoba Anyonwe, reporting for News Central.
Wow. That's, of course, an important update there. The people of Plateau have been through so much, unfortunately. There's been killings upon killings, and the state of insecurity hasn't gotten any better in Plateau State. It's a conversation that the whole of the country is involved in. But it's great that Peter Obi decided to extend his sympathies to the people of Plateau State. But we're hoping that the government in power, the current government in power, sees the need for a state of emergency. You know, right now it's gotten out of hand. I know somebody who has family in Plateau State, and we gathered together for a hangout, and the person was looking down, and the person just said, you know what, pray for me and for my family, because it's almost like we can't go to bed at night with peace of mind. Every morning you're hoping not to hear negative news from your parents, you're hoping that you can still call them and they'll be alive. And that's the reality of what a number of people have to live with every day.
Yeah. So there is that, you know, and there's also the, you know, the part where, so Peter Obi, of course, you know, did visit yesterday. It was his birthday. In the build up to his birthday, he did announce that he wasn't going to be celebrating, that he was going to, that he was, of course, encouraging everyone to, you know, give to the poor and those who are really, really going through tough times in Nigeria. Yesterday on social media, there was a lot of fanfare, mostly celebrating his birthday from his, online supporters. And of course, there was a lot of giveaways also. A lot of money was given out. A lot of aid was given out also, mostly because of what he said. But the thing that I'm pointing out here is that, this is something that he has always done. He has always been that person that goes to communities, looks out for schools that need to be helped, look out for hospitals that need to be helped, looks out for internally displaced persons camps that need to be helped, and gives to them. It has always been his character, and the person that he has been. And this is once again, another opportunity that the Nigerian government should have used to tell Nigerians that they understand the pain that Nigerians are dealing with and they are going through. But Peter Obi, who is not president, who is not a government official, who is not even in office, is the one taking responsibility, or seemingly doing the things that you would expect from people who are in office. The Senate president, for people who haven't followed the Plateau State incident, more than 500 lives have been lost in Plateau State in the most gruesome manner, to bandits, terrorists. Nobody even knows who these people are. That still the Nigerian government has not been able to, beat their chest and say that they have arrested and they are prosecuting. Thousands of lives have been lost in the Middle Belt region of Nigeria in the last long while, and this is almost a weekly occurrence. The Senate president has not visited these places. The Nigerian president has not visited. The Nigerian vice president has not visited. Like, nobody who is currently in office has thought to themselves that the lives in Plateau State matter, and so maybe I should pay them a visit. Nobody, not one person who is currently in office has decided that maybe those lives, matter. The Senate president is posting vlogs or reels of himself going to work with, different, security, aides running after his car and his, infinity cap. It is so annoying, really, just seeing the body language. And in the Buhari administration, I kept talking about body language, the body language. So even if you don't mean it, and that's the thing with politics, even if you don't mean it, let your body language show that at least you care. Let the people feel, that you care, that there's some concern about these things. As president, yes, the law doesn't necessarily state that you must go to every location that there's a disaster that has taken place, but at least for a country that is going through its worst, state of inflation and recession, is going through really, really severe, cost of living crisis, you should at least have the body language to show Nigerian people that you are concerned.
The truth is that if several other African countries were to go through a fraction of what we're going through in Nigeria,
they would have, either crumbled or just exactly. Right? But of course, we have
such tenacity to be able to withstand immense level of hardship and pain. We're pushed to the wall, we go behind the wall. It's almost like Nigerians keep enduring. Like, how do you, first of all, we're just talking about the tweet that analyzed the increase of fuel prices in 3 months, 15K to fill a tank, 15,000 naira to fill a tank in June, 30 in July, 55 June, 55 in July.
Yeah.
It's a massive increase, right? But if you go back to, we talked about Senegal a while ago, and what happened, I think it was the bus crash. The nation declared 3 days of mourning.
Yeah.
You see that there is empathy. There is a sense of, we have lost our people, we are sad, we are crying with you, right? But we don't get that a lot.
Yeah.
And you can't be a very good leader if you don't know how to empathize with your people.
If you do not have it, you don't have it. And that's the thing. Like Rivers people will say, if you didn't day, didn't day. And so what Peter Obi basically is showing, to a large extent, and that's why he continues to win the hearts of, the people, regardless of what political side of your side you are on. APC, PDP, LPA, NNPP, NNPC, whichever one that you support, you would always be able to see that there is something about this particular character, that continues to win the hearts of the average Nigerian, because that is simply what they want. Empathy, an empathy that should show not just, that you understand, but at least you are willing to sacrifice a little bit more to make their lives better. There's not much, to add to this. It's really just to point out, that these are the things that are lacking with the current administration, and they need to do better. Basically.
Which is why I say sometimes I think it's important to start considering women in leadership, because women know how to show empathy much more. It's, I mean, that's a conversation for another day. Let's head to Zimbabwe, where Elizabeth Valerio, leader of the United Zimbabwe Alliance, has been granted permission by the Electoral Court to contest the 2023 presidential election after her papers were rejected by the nomination court for late submission. Valerio becomes the only woman presidential aspirant in a field of 11 men, including President Emerson Mnangagwa and Nelson Chamisa of the Citizens Coalition for Change.
Now, according to Valerio's lawyer, Alec Muchadehama, the ZEC has been ordered to take necessary steps to ensure the UZA leader is added to the ballot. The Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, has refused to accept her nomination papers, claiming that she submitted them late at the nomination court. Meanwhile, the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change says ZEC has given political parties unusable copies of the voters' roll, arguing that they need an electronic copy of the voters' register. It really just continues to look, like more and more steps, that the ZANU-PF is, trying to play to reduce the chances of other political aspirant to be president.
Absolutely.
And funny enough, because of the things the things that have happened in the past, normally you can look at these things and actually agree with the ZEC that she did submit them late.
But
it could actually be factual.
Yeah,
exactly.
Their hands have not been entirely clean. From them bullying the CCC political party members, refusing for them to gather, and with CCC their excuse would be that the CCC did not get police permit. In one of the situations we talked about here, they said the CCC actually said they gave the police notice 2 weeks prior. But what was the police the reason for refusing the notice? They said the roads to the place where they were trying to converge for the campaign was bad, and if there was any emergency services would not be able to get to them. All of that just looked like real rubbish story, right?
Yeah.
So the ZANU-PF hasn't particularly played fair in the preparation and the countdown to the elections. And I wonder what the international election observers, what the independent election observers have to say. I wonder if they would have flown them in by now, because part of the conversation that has started or that has been going on is the fact that election is not just about the day when you're casting your ballot. Is the fairness leading up until today, right? Have they brought in the election observers to see that the opposition hasn't been given a voice? They've not been allowed to use a voice.
Oh, well, these are things that we would follow. The elections are on the 23rd of August. And so, there is time for more drama and for more, things to unravel in Zimbabwe. We, of course, hope that it's completely peaceful and Zimbabweans have, their decisions, make the best decision for themselves moving forward. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're moving into the world of sports.
Thanks for staying with us. It's still Breakfast Central and it's time for sports. Now we'll begin from the home front, where veteran Nigerian football coach Aliyu Zubair has left his position as the head coach of Nigerian Premier League club Gombe United. Zubair is leaving the Savannah Scorpions following the expiration of his contract. The experienced tactician spent 4 years in charge of Gombe United and masterminded the side's promotion to the Nigerian Premier League 2 years ago. He helped Gombe United keep their Premier League status last season. Away from that to football matters, in terms of the Women's Super Falcons of Nigeria will be without the influential duo of Rashida Ajibade and Alima Ayinde in Friday's Women's World Cup clash against Olympic champions Canada. Ajibade and Ayinde were sent off in Super Falcons semi-final clash against host nation Morocco at the 2022 Women's African Cup of Nations. According to a disciplinary review released by FIFA on Wednesday, the two players are not eligible to take part in the game. The Super Falcons will also face co-host Australia and Netherlands Republic of Ireland in the same group. Away from there to some transfers, talking about African players, Manchester City have agreed a £30 million deal for Saudi Pro League side Al Ahly to sign Algerian winger Riyad Mahrez. The 32-year-old has been to travel on City's pre-season trip to Japan and South Korea. Manchester City paid £60 million for Mahrez in 2018 and he scored 15 goals from 47 games in the Blues treble-winning season. Riyad Mahrez has won the Premier League 5 times, once with Leicester City and 4 times with Manchester City. We wish him the very best right there. Still talking about transfers, Liverpool agreed a deal in principle worth £12 million plus add-ons to sell midfielder Jordan Henderson to Saudi Arabian club Al Attifaq. The agreement for Henderson follows Liverpool receiving a £40 million offer from Al Ittihad for fellow midfielder Fabinho last Friday. Henderson has played 491 times for the Reds, scoring 33 goals and registering 58 assists. He won 2 League Cups, FA Cup, Premier League, UEFA Champions League, UEFA Super Cup, Club World Cup titles with Liverpool during a stint. Still talking about the transfer scene, Italian Serie A giants Inter Milan have signed Colombian winger Juan Cuadrado on a 1-year deal. Now the 35-year-old arrives in Milan after an 8-year spell at Juventus, which ended at the end of June when his contract expired. Cuadrado helped Juventus to 5 Serie A titles, 4 Italian Cups and 2 Super Cups during a stint. During his time in England with Chelsea, he won the Premier League and the League Cup. He provided the highest number of assists in the 2020-2021 Champions League as well as at the 2014 World Cup. Away from that, in the world of cycling, defending champion Jonas Vingegaard is on the brink of retaining his Tour de France title after opening up a lead of more than 7 minutes on a grueling stage 17. The Dane powered up the final climb of the Queen stage of the Tour and saw his main rival Tadej Pogačar crumble. Felix Gall broke clear to win the stage by 34 seconds ahead of Britain's Simon Yates, with Vingegaard 4th. Now Vingegaard extended his lead over Pogačar from 10 seconds to almost 2 minutes with a blistering ride in the individual time trial on Tuesday, stage 16.
Yeah, it was definitely crazy, and there was a lot of people, and of course the crowd was very, very nice. But at one point I had to stand still even because of the car. But that's of course unfortunate. But I guess that's what can happen when you put in 20% gradients in the end of the tour.
The very best of cycling rider. Wrapping up sports updates at this time, German tennis star Alexander Zverev faces a new assault allegation after penalty order reportedly sought in Berlin. The latest accusation made against the German is by his ex, Brenda Patier, the mother of their daughter, Mela. Now, the public prosecutor's office in Berlin is seeking a penalty order against the 2-time ATP Finals champion for alleged bodily harm. If the court decides the order should be granted, Zverev will have 2 weeks to file an appeal. This process does not involve a trial. And that wraps up sports updates at this time. It's back to you, Olive.
Interested there. I want to talk about the Saudi experiment. It seems like China tried it. I spoke about this before. China tried it before. It didn't work. Now Saudi is doing it, and it seems to be working. Do you think that it will be a success?
I think it will be. Yes, the long-term goal is definitely to host the World Cup and bid and successfully host the World Cup. But I think they're also investing massively in football infrastructure and trying to grow the game from the grassroots. We've seen that same template replicated or initiated rather in Morocco in terms of how they've developed their football over the last 10 years, especially the King Mohammed VI Football Academy playing a huge part in how the various Moroccan national teams have evolved over the last 6-8 years. So it's almost like the same template is what is being replicated right there in the Saudi Pro League. Quite all right, big stars are going there, some of them in the twilight of their careers like Ronaldo, like Benzema, but you can't rule out the fact that you also have some youngsters also going there in terms of, players who are still in their 20s, even mid-20s. I think it's all about developing the league and more importantly, ensuring that, the young players have the needed facilities to grow the game. Thus far, they look like they're on track, and if they continue with this trend, you can definitely say that they will be successful at it.
But it's taking a lot of investment, though, because I've seen a couple of those games. They don't have full stadiums. They don't have a lot of brand sponsorship yet. So these players' transfer fees and their bonuses and their weekly payments aren't coming from sales of ticket sales or anything like that.
Merchandise and the rest, yes.
So it's a massive investment that I'm really hoping it works, because it would be a disaster if after 3 years they decide that, okay, well, this isn't working.
What I think is over time you'd realize that the brand itself will grow and be able to bring about some return on the various investments the Saudi government has made. Remember that the Saudi government did take over 4 Pro League clubs right there. Al Hilal is one of them. You have Al Nassr in the Al Ittihad as well. I think right now it's all about investing. But the good thing for them is the caliber of players making the move. At first, it looked like Ronaldo was just a one-off when he went in January. But you look at Karim Benzema, a Ballon d'Or winner, also plying his trade there. There's a player like N'Golo Kante who is world famous and popular even within the European scene, moving there as well. So many other players, when they are able to attract these caliber of players rather, you have that brand exposure and awareness, and I think it will do them a whole lot of good on the long run. Let's take, for instance, Lionel Messi at the Major League Soccer. I mean, you had reports of tickets going for as much as $110,000 just to watch Lionel Messi. That shows you how much money will come in for Inter Miami in terms of ticketing, in terms of merchandise, and what have you in the coming months. So I think if they continue in this trend, with this trend in terms of attracting the big names, they will definitely reap the rewards, in the future.
I'd have loved for us to talk about the Super Falcons and the 2 people who were suspended and what effect that would have on the Super Falcons. If you could wrap that up in say 10 seconds.
It definitely takes something off our offensive outlets. Rashida Ajibade has been on the side for quite a while, quite experienced, and can always guarantee you goals as well as pace. The same thing with Alimad Ainde. So it takes something off offensively. But when you look at the squad, we have more than enough players to fill in the gap in that instance in terms of getting the goals for us. You have Asisa Oshoala, 5-time African Footballer of the Year, leading the lines there. Desire Okparanoze is back in the squad as well. So let's see how they fare without these 2. It's just for the opener against Canada. And the Canadians are no pushover. They are the Olympic champions.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Samson. We'll see you around.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay. We're going to break now. When we return, Breakfast Central continues.
Sometimes, it's not just the distance we travel. It's the gaps we close. It's not the things we buy. It's the memories we create. Sometimes, it's beyond the places we go. It's the connections we make. Not just the things we taste. It's the taste of things to come. And it's never a question of if, but when. Because life is always just a bit better with American Express. Introducing the Access Bank American Express Gold Card and the Metal Platinum Card, now available through Access Bank.
Thank you very much for staying tuned to Breakfast Central. We've had a number of conversations around the continent. Let's take you through them once again. All right, this morning on Breakfast Central, we've spoken about what exactly happens in South Africa as they're processing new school laws.
And Zimbabwe registers its only female presidential candidate. We're looking forward to the 23rd of August for the Zimbabwean elections.
And in the world of sports, Gombe United manager Zubair resigns after 4 years. There were several other stories in the world of sports. But there's more to come this morning on Breakfast Central.
This morning, Nigerians react as fuel prices rise. Nobody's happy.
CGID to host Journalism Innovation Conference. We'll talk more about this shortly.
And of course, what are the major stories making headlines across the continent on the newspapers?
Hello and welcome to Breakfast Headlines. I am Dakpo Adigboye. Let's kick off in Southern Africa, where 41 people have been injured in an unexplained explosion that ripped through central Johannesburg during rush hour on Wednesday, tearing through a main road. Emergency services initially blamed underground gas pipes, but the Egoli Gas Company said it was unlikely the explosion, which cracked tarmac and overturned vehicles including minibus taxis. The provincial premier of Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, said a preliminary investigation did not reveal the cause of the blast. He said 41 people were injured, including 2 in a critical condition, 9 seriously injured and 30 with minor injuries.
Yeah, I've been here for long, since 2007. I never experienced this incident. To me, I'm very shocked and I'm not safe. I'm thinking of like maybe go somewhere where there's a house towns where I know that I'm safe. Here I'm not safe.
In the meantime, South African opposition party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, EFF, have reacted to the statement that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not attend the BRICS summit in South Africa. In a statement signed by its national spokesperson, the EFF said the outcome is not unexpected, considering the lack of security guarantees by the ANC government to the Russian Federation. EFF's national spokesperson, Lee-Ann Mathies, speaks further on this development.
We note the communication from the criminal president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, that the Russian president, President Putin, will not attend next month's BRICS summit here in South Africa. This outcome is not unexpected, considering the lack of security guarantees by the ever-failing ANC government. The ANC government failed to protect not only a strategic global partner, but also a historical ally in our fight against colonial domination and imperialism. In a typical Western imperialist fashion, South Africa faced threats of losing financial and political ties with the West unless it arrested President Putin. The United States of America even threatened to withdraw South Africa from the African Growth and Opportunity Act, and this was a form of pressure. It must therefore be highlighted that President Putin's withdrawal is a consequence of South Africa's reluctancy to be firm on international affairs and its inability to resist pressure.
In West Africa, the embattled Nigerian student Mesoma Ejikeme, who was accused of allegedly falsifying a joint admission and matriculation board examination result, has once again apologized to the board and the nation over recent conduct, blaming it on her ignorance. Mesoma, who appeared before the nation's House of Representatives ad hoc committee constituted to investigate the matter, admitted her misconduct and promised that she has learned her lesson.
I apologize for all the apportioned blame and all the pains I've caused. I want to emphasize that ignorance played a significant role in my misguided action. I lacked a clear understanding of the far-reaching consequences and the impact my actions would have. Words cannot adequately describe the depth of pain I feel for letting you down. This is the first time in my life and academic studies that I will be accused for any form of misbehavior. Therefore, I plead for leniency and total forgiveness for my misconduct.
Let's also tell you that the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, TET Fund, says over 137 students sponsored abroad by the fund have absconded. The Executive Secretary of the fund, Sonny Echono, disclosed this when he appeared before the House of Representatives ad hoc committee investigating the alleged mismanagement of 2.1 billion naira tertiary fund tax by TET Fund. Echono said the scholars who were sponsored by the fund for higher education outside the country refused to return to the country after completing their programs. In Eastern Africa, where police in Kenya fired tear gas at protesters during clashes that left at least 12 people wounded on Wednesday, as the opposition organized demonstrations calling on the government to lower the cost of living. The opposition called for 3 days of countrywide protest aimed at forcing the president to repeal a finance law that has imposed new taxes. President William Ruto has pledged that no protest would take place, saying he would take opposition leader Raila Odinga heads-on. At least 10 suspects, child laborers, have drowned in Rwanda after their boat sank. Police spokesperson John Kabera confirmed this on Wednesday, saying investigators have detained the man allegedly responsible for hiring them. The dead were among 13 children aged between 11 and 15 years, hired by a construction worker traveling on the vessel with them across the Nyangoro River in southern Rwanda on Monday, when the accident occurred. And of course, that wraps up the news at this time. Back to you in the studio, Ole Vanosa.
Thank you very much, Dapo, for bringing us the news. It's a wonder why Ms. Oma is being made to give a press conference and why she has to do that. It would seem very, I don't know. I mean, she has already apologized. What is the necessity of that? What was the necessity of that press conference?
So I guess this is a follow-up to that particular story. If we cast our mind back, when our story broke out then, the House of Rep was also interested in the case. House of Rep.
So they don't have other things to do. This case has now become poster case for, like, they don't have other jobs to do.
Well, there are quite a number of bodies that were interested in this particular case. One of them is the House of Reps, and I think this is the follow-up to their own side of the investigation. Then they set up a committee, and I guess the findings of their committee is that I mean, there was a bit of misconduct on our part there, and hence the public apology we are seeing.
There are many people that owe us public apologies. We are yet to get one from them, and a lot of them are grown adults sitting in politics, sitting there holding public offices. We're not yet getting any apology from them. It's a shame that this girl has been made to be the one to be the scapegoat for all of this. That's not excusing bad behavior. She had apologized a while ago. Her father had apologized. It's enough. Let's move on to other things.
Like
Thank
the
you so
fuel
much.
hike, right?
Sorry?
Like the fuel hike.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And other things as well. There's still others. The the IPOP sit at home is still a problem in the southeast.
In southeast,
we still have people
yes.
that are being killed in Plateau. There's still a number of things that they need to legislate upon. Now is not the time to be looking for young children to be using as media scapegoats to distract us from the problems that Nigeria is facing. Thank you so much, Dakpo, for joining us.
Thank you for having me as always.
All right. Now let's go through the papers this morning and share with you what's happening around the continent. We begin this morning with the Punch newspaper. On the front page of the Punch, the big story says fuel price hike, which is what everybody's talking about. Business operators panic, fear shutdown, job losses. Hike to worsen manufacturers' woes. Many SMEs will die, according to MAN, LCCI, and Lament. NLC considers emergency meeting. PDP slams federal government as reps summon NNPCL boss. Soldiers arrest Beninese, one other with truckload of cannabis. Where are they taking it to? Drug dealers forfeit 111 abandoned vehicles to federal government. Mesoma appears before reps panel, begs jam, which is a story we just took now. Train attack, court okay secret trial of Boko Haram negotiator on page 8. Questions, anxieties as Tinubu drags feet on appointment of ministers. His time hasn't yet elapsed, but TikTok, the time is running. NNPCL monopoly ends as marketers' fuel vessel arrives. Renowned Nigerian Omotosho dies at 80. Our thoughts and our prayers are with his family. These are the stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. Let's head over to The Guardian and see what it has to say.
All right, on The Guardian this morning, it says banks, firms in currency risk, capital erosion crisis as a dollar hits 850 naira.
Hey!
That's crazy.
Wow. Yesterday was 8:30, we were complaining.
Yeah.
This thing is going to get to 1,000 naira, the way we're seeing it.
3 persons killed in fresh Plateau State attack. And also, Falana PDP slam federal government and NNPC over fuel price hike. Senate urges relaxation of age requirement for jobs. And northern leaders wrong to ask amnesty for bandits and terrorists, says Clark. Subsidy removal. Koesu directs members to work twice a week. Not very many stories actually on The Guardian. I think The Guardian is also overwhelmed with the petrol scarcity, and so everyone's just, taking a break. But the big story there definitely is the exchange rate, the naira and dollar, of course, as it hits 850 naira to the dollar. If you remember, in the good old days, the naira and the dollar, of course, was exchanging for like 100 naira. Remember in like 2008, it was 110 or 100 and something, but it was pretty decent back then. But now we're at 850, and all these changes happened in roughly about, 8 years. In 2014, I think it was still about 212 or 220 naira to the dollar. It wasn't, this insane.
There was a time, I shudder to remember that there was a time that the dollar was changing at 100 and something.
Oh yeah, I remember also.
I still remember very clearly. It feels like eons ago.
I did change, dollars in 2008, and I know that I changed it for 100, but that was because I was changing it in, in a business place, not in a proper BDC. So the, actual BDCs may have been changed for 110, 112, kind of thing. But that was in 2008. In 2014, I remember also that it was like 220, 212, 214 naira to the dollar. That range. That was about it.
And at that point, we even thought that it was high. We never.
Yes, it was. I mean, then it was seemingly high.
That we have ever experienced as a country.
Yeah.
It's the highest. When it got to 400, we were all panicking and freaking out and thinking, how are we going to survive? It's more than doubled since then.
And then you're going to have to keep asking if the government understands what the economic policies is meant to put in place, or they are really just winging it. What did Godwin Emefiele and the former administration really do about with Nigeria's economy that has led us to where we are today?
Like they say,
because you can't blame COVID.
Exactly. Like they say in social media space, you've talked about what their plans are. In social media space, they will say their plans are vibes and inshallah.
Yeah.
That's what
Mostly.
it is. Until we start to see that we become an export-based country, which is not happening immediately, and we start to see that we're attracting foreign investments, a lot of this will continue.
I don't think that's what it. I don't think that's what it is. Anyway, we will expand on it later on. Let's take a short break. When we come back, we're going back to our top stories this morning here on Breakfast Central.
The youth has 60% of its entire population, and it's time for their voices to be heard loud and clear. Involving the young people in nation building is not merely a question of inclusion, but one that is vital for economic growth, innovation, peace, and security. Fafanua Africa provides the platform for the teeming young and vibrant population of our dear continent to voice their concerns with one goal in mind. Provide profound and tangible solutions that will help redefine and reposition the future of Africa. Join us every Friday at 2 p.m. West African Time, 4 p.m. East African Time, and 3 p.m. Central African Time on New Central TV. Fafanua Africa, redefining Africa.
Right, we begin the conversations for the second hour in West Africa and Nigeria, where the pump price of fuel surged to 617 naira per litre on Tuesday across Nigerian markets. This marks the highest price ever recorded in Africa's largest economy. The price difference varies between states but remains at around 560 naira per litre. News Central's Perpetua Fashomi Peter sampled the reactions of Nigerians to this recent price hike.
Pre-inauguration, you could spend as much as 11,000 naira to fill up your 55-litre Toyota Corolla tank. After inauguration, that quickly moved to 27,000 naira. But with the latest announcement, you could spend as much as 31,000 naira filling up the same tank. What are Nigerians saying about this? Let's find out.
Well, imagine I buy fuel of 8,000, I think I make 10,000. Am I gaining or am I losing? Tell your boss, how will I fix the tire? So all those things, we are not fine with it.
I was really distraught. I don't know why it keeps going up. And I believe that in the midst of this fuel hike saga, the government should really do something about the palliatives. At least if it's even to increase people's basic salary, it will go a long way.
The problem now is this. What is driving the recent increase? Is it OPEC? Is it increase in international prices? Or is it that they had a problem with the original calculation they did? That is the question I want answered.
Corroborating Mele Kyari's statement, Gerald Moore, head of corporate services in an oil retailing company, said the increase was imminent considering the volatility in the prices of crude oil.
What we are seeing in Nigeria may not be totally unconnected to the global rise in the price of Brent. Don't forget that Nigeria continues to import oil. The recent floating of the exchange rates, which of course has led to a significant rise in the price of dollar in the market. And you know, oil is a commodity that mostly trades in dollars.
In a swift reaction to the angst expressed by Nigerians, President Tinubu ordered the unveiling of the entire palliative package to Nigerians and also asked for the immediate review of the proposed 8,000 naira cash transfer to 12 million Nigerian households. However, Nigerians seem to be tired of waiting.
The government is still talking about still at the level of talks with respect to cushioning the effects. When are we going to see real implementation? Another area we need to also look at is the fact that have we seen reduction costs in terms of the government? The government is not only the average Nigerian that should tighten their seatbelts, their beds. The government should also be seen tightening their bed. Government officials should also be seen tightening their bed. I think that will help Nigerians to bear this pain.
Considering the ongoing challenges of increasing food prices and transportation expenses, many more Nigerians may further fall below the poverty line if urgent steps are not taken to alleviate the financial impact of President Bola Tinubu's economic reforms on the citizenry. Therefore, it is crucial for the tripartite committee responsible for revealing the furtive measures to do so quickly. Perpetua Fasome Peter reporting for News Central.
Well, thanks to Perpetua Fasome Peters for that report. You can obviously see the general view of Nigerians to this. Now, joining us for more analysis on the fuel price increases, Bala Zaka. He's a petroleum and current affairs analyst. Mr. Zaka, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, and thank you for having me. I greet our viewers across the globe.
Good to have you. Well, the government's explanation about, market, forces and the exchange rate and some of all of that, doesn't sit very well with Nigerians. So I want to get your views, if you agree with the Nigerian government and what their reasons are for the increase in price of petrol from, somewhere around 500 naira to currently 617 naira. Do the excuses or the reasons add up?
I'm at 100% variance with the government in this context, and it's very simple. I think there is something that really gets me surprised sometimes. First of all, let's define leaders. You see, leaders are fellow citizens that other citizens collectively decided to hand over their economic, political, and social destinies into their care to manage in national interest. And to that extent, if leaders are not doing the right thing, then you need to look at the terms of reference. And the terms of reference had to do with the kind of contract you have with your leaders. I mean, you're talking about something that is very, very elementary here. Very simple. We're talking about providing goods and services. It's only government that is supposed to provide goods and services to individual and corporate citizens. What corporate and individual citizens owe the government is for them to be civic in their behavior and to comply with their civic responsibilities of paying taxes and levies and other obligations. But in Nigeria, the government is abdicating its responsibilities and moving to somewhere else. I mean, this thing we're talking is very simple, very elementary. What is supposed to happen? Every government across the globe provides what we call subsidy. Subsidy is a globally accepted economic pain cushioning concept. Subsidy is a government creation. Subsidy is associated with governments across the globe. The equivalent of subsidy when you are dealing with private sector is called discount. Every country you go, government gives subsidy in education so that she can build her citizens and they will become valuable human assets. Government gives subsidy in health so that she can have healthy citizens. Government provides subsidy in everything. And this is so it's so strange. But let me also tell you, in the context of Nigeria, we are talking about energy security here. We're talking about energy security. Any country that has no energy will not grow. The economy of Nigeria today, if you look at the economy of Nigeria, we are grinding towards the cliff edge. The economy will collapse into the valley. What is happening in Nigeria is a practical case of our leaders will shoot before they aim. Quote me that I said so. And we are just discussing the downstream sector of the oil and gas industry. Like you know, the midstream does not exist in Nigeria. In the upstream, we are having worst calamities. At this rate, I mean, it's very clear the disposable income of Nigerians has been eroded. Check the GDP variables or the equation of the GDP. The consumption index has been rubbished because the disposable income is not there. There is no investment because investors are groaning under what we call energy costs. They cannot break even.
All right, Mr. Zaka.
Others who cannot withstand the torture have decided to run away from Nigeria.
Yeah.
When you look
Mr. Zaka, kindly hold on. So we're going to have you continue, and of course, when you come back, you can then go deeper into the idea of food deregulation that they claim. You know, who really is responsible for importation of petrol at this point? You know, and some of the other little details here and there as to why the government may not be, you know, very honest with us. But let's take a break, a very short break. We'll come back and we'll have you speak on those.
Hey lovers, my name is Sharon Ojai-Grube.
Hi guys, my name is Femi Adebayo.
My name is Anado Odigesiabo Ojo.
Steve Chicks, I'm an actor.
Uche Montana.
Popularly known as Neo Energy. My name is Neo Mobak Bafre. Uzo Arukwe, and you're hanging out with News Central.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
Keep watching.
News Central TV. News Central TV.
News Central TV.
News Central TV. Did you let me? And if I'm
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We're still looking at the fuel price hike and what the implication is for Nigeria. Mr. Bala, thank you very much for joining us. Let's still look further into the conversation about the fuel price hike. Yesterday we had a conversation about the importation of fuel and the NNPC being the sole importer. They have said that they're no longer the sole importer. We'd like you to shed more light on this as well as the claims of by the government.
Okay, first of all, I want to let you know that I've just discovered that many people don't know the difference between deregulation and liberalization. Many don't even know the difference between commercialization and privatization. So that is even the beginning of the ignorance. Look, subsidy is supposed to be something that is associated with government. It's only government that is supposed to provide goods and services. Before now, when the government wanted to remove subsidy on the price of diesel, petrol, aviation fuel, and kerosene, we told them that it was the wrong move. But the press singers and the fake technocrats tried to justify it. They said then that when they remove the subsidy, that there will be investors, that prices will come down. Before they removed subsidy on the price of diesel, a liter of diesel was about 87 Nigerian naira. It is more than 700 Nigerian naira. Let them show us one investor that has come. Let them show us the competitive prices that they talked about that were going to bring the prices down. But I can tell you that the only thing we noticed were collapse in strategic industrial sectors, collapse in strategic domestic sectors, and collapse in strategic commercial sectors. That is why today you go to commercial sectors like banks, they open at 8:30 and they close by, say, probably 3 o'clock, because energy cost is very high. Many companies and factories are shutting down now because the cost of energy is high. And as you can see, you know it, in some companies now or organizations, they tell their staff to come twice or thrice in a week. That is affecting production. This thing is too elementary. And quote me that I said, refining is basic chemistry. Refining is not as complex as heart surgery or cesarean operation or even kidney transplant. Across the globe, Nigeria is a member of OPEC. Why are they not having this kind of issues in the days of Libya of Gaddafi? Why are they not having this kind of issues in all concerns in Iran, Iraq, Indonesia, Malaysia, Norway, and the rest? This thing is too elementary. Let me tell you, the whole world is laughing at Nigeria. Anybody who tells you that all these independent marketers, major marketers will help the situation, they are lying, because they are private establishment. They are only after profit maximization and cost minimization. It is only government that will provide this. And anybody who tells you that state-owned refineries do not work, that person is a hater of Nigerians. This is the simple thing that is supposed to happen. Instead of removing the subsidy, it is the saboteurs that you will remove. It is the economic vampires and economic marauders that you are going to remove. Subsidy is a global concept. If it is not working in your own country, that cannot invalidate the validity of that concept. Rather, check in your country why it is not working. And in the context of Nigeria, it is because we have wrong pegs in square holes. Most of the people we have claimed to know how this thing is, but they don't know. And that was why in the course of this discussion, I will give you bit by bit in elementary form. We have more than 100 universities, more than 100 polytechnics. It is difficult for Nigeria. Then why are we having all those institutes and universities? The countries where we go to import these refined petroleum products, how many universities do they have? How many polytechnics do they have?
All right, Mr. Zaka, these are really, really important questions that you've asked, you know, but it paints a picture generally of, it paints the Nigerian picture, basically. But I want, you know, that we help Nigerians understand why the price of petrol can get as high as 617 and even higher, because there are fears that it might get up to 700, maybe even 800 naira a litre if things continue to look this way. But the government, of course, claimed that it had set up a structure with which, you know, things would balance out and the price would continue to reduce. So is the government lying with their claims that this is the right? I mean, you've already stated that, you know, removal of subsidy is completely wrong. But now that it has supposedly been taken off and it has ended, do you believe the government's claims that things will eventually balance out when, you know, other players in the market are allowed to import petrol, and so the price will eventually, markets, you know, would clash and eventually things will go down? Are those things that Nigerians should look forward to and just hold on and watch the markets reduce the price? Or is that never going to happen?
It's not correct. It will never come down. Quote me that I said so. It will never come down. First of all, Nigeria is an emerging economy. Nigeria's currency is very weak. Nigerians are very poor. Anybody who tells you that it will come down, that person is lying to you. The only way out is accept that we are on the wrong track. The only way is to come back and internally domesticate. Let me tell you what is happening. What is happening is a case of us having some, not all, many of our political and economic leaders are morally bankrupt and are suffering from moral insolvency. Quote me. This is not the views of News Central. Quote me that I say so. And the reason why I'm telling you so is because it does not make sense for a country that has raw materials to go out and be getting refined products. Anybody who tells you that the price will come down is lying to you. and this thing is affecting us so much. What we just need to do is get the crude oil from the wellheads here in Naira, refine it in Naira, distribute to Nigerians in Naira, save our Naira and save ourselves from exchange rate pressures. But I know that technocrats who are government proteges and singers and press singers will tell you that, but it is an international product. You will need spare parts. Even this my eyeglass is an imported product. So we know that you will need spare parts. But I'm also telling you that anybody who ties local consumption to international price, that person is dumb. That person doesn't know what he or she is talking about. The truth is this, at the level of OPEC, the crude oil for sales that every country will send out for sales to the international market is controlled. That is what you call the OPEC quota for every country. But the quantity that you will have for your internal consumption is not regulated by OPEC. And to that extent, if we want a liter of petrol to be 10 naira, it can be 10 naira in Nigeria because it is for internal consumption. And people are making mistakes. We are talking about energy security here. You are living in a country where you have more than 200 million citizens. You have strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors, relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity from the national grid. There is no way you will develop. So the only thing we have done is Nigerians decided to resort to other sources of energy and power. They resorted to generators, but they cannot afford diesel. The next thing is petrol generators. And today, as I speak to you now, petrol generators are not affordable. So the only thing, what do you expect people to do? That barber that will need to go and spend like 6,000 to buy 10 liters, how many hair will he cut? That lady in the hair salon that will spend 6,000 to buy 10 liters, how many hairs will she dress? That vulcanizer that will go and buy 10 liters and spend 6,000 naira, tell me how many tires he will fix before he breaks even. This thing is very practical. When you go to the industrial sector, to energy, if you go to what we call income statement, the major thing eating them today is energy cost. This thing is too elementary. Anybody who tells you that we are not having leaders that are chameleonic, that person is not telling you the truth. Even on the gas side, ordinary from our natural gas, you are supposed to get ammonia. From ammonia, you get urea. From urea, you get fertilizer. But I can tell you that the fertilizer bag that used to cost probably 2,000 is close to 15,000 now. And as I still speak to you, the minimum wage in Nigeria is 30,000 naira. Minimum wage cannot buy a 50-kilogram bag of rice.
The unfortunate part about that is, even as you mentioned the minimum wage being 30,000 naira, there are still states that are still owing people salaries. Some people are still being owed salaries.
Allow me to explain. The minimum wage in Nigeria today cannot buy a 50 kg bag of rice. The minimum wage in our dear country called Nigeria today cannot buy a 50-liter jerry can of diesel. Quote me that I said, any country whose minimum wage, monthly minimum wage, cannot buy a 50 kg bag of rice, that country is doomed for collapse. Quote me that I say so. Also, in the upstream sector of the oil and gas industry, in the whole of Nigeria today, we don't have up to 15 active drilling rigs. Don't say this is News Central. Say I said so. And I'm waiting for any person who will challenge me. Any country that does not have, especially Nigeria, you don't have up to 15 active drilling rigs. How can you be able to produce and meet up with your OPEC quota? How can you be able to produce and meet up with your internal consumption to provide energy and to meet up with your budget deficit? So anybody that is telling you that we need to go and rely on import, and if you look at it technically, from the discussion, they don't want us to fix the refineries. Every time they are talking about imports, import license, it's a shame. Let me also tell you something. There is this radio station that sometimes talks about imports and shipping position. Every time I hear them talking about the vessels, so liters of petrol are at the ports, so liters of million liters of diesel have arrived. So tons of rice have been imported. Other Nigerians that are ignorant may be happy. For me, I feel like breaking my radio because it's a shame. Those food and those distillates or refined petroleum products we are importing, we are only enriching other countries.
Mr. Balazaka, let's talk about, I mean, you've enumerated a number of these problems and explained in depth the kind of trouble we seem to have found ourselves in. Do you maybe have faith that the Bola Ahmed Tinubu-led government will be able to right the wrongs that have been done so far, especially as regards the fuel price hike and invariably the increase in cost of living for Nigerians?
On what? Let us come back and internally domesticate. Let us make sure we internally refine. And with due respect, this is what I want to say. When we went even into democracy, we have been in democracy for almost 24 years now, from 1999 to 2003. Even if it will take 10 years to construct one new refinery, we are supposed to be having 2 brand new refineries. But this is what I want to tell you. The last time Nigeria constructed a refinery was around 1990 or 1989. You're talking about 34 years. The current generation of leaders didn't deem it fit to maintain the 4 refineries they inherited. They didn't deem it fit to construct new ones. You didn't need a soothsayer to tell you that your country called Nigeria will run into energy crisis. Then in the case of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, with due respect, I knew what he did in Lagos. I knew how he fixed the landscape and the structures. But in the context of removing fuel subsidy, I want to tell you, quote me, not your TV station, that he was wrongly advised. Because we told him, or we advised, that the only product remaining holding Nigerians was this petrol. And they were just looking at the savings from removal of subsidy. None of them was looking at the cost of the calamity and anarchy that will follow. Look at the economic calamities now. Look at the social and political calamities now. Many people now are telling their staff to come to work twice or thrice in a day. Is that not affecting productivity? Is that how to utilize human capital? Then some people have discovered that the volume of consumption have gone down, and some people in government are saying it is because price increase, smugglers have disappeared. Those people are very wicked. The reason why people are not buying now is because their disposable income has been weakened and eroded.
Yeah, Balazaka, I can feel the passion with which you speak. There's many Nigerians who are affected. Millions and millions of Nigerians are affected by these decisions. We, of course, would hope that the Tinubu administration understands what is at stake and, of course, fixes what needs to be fixed. But thank you very much for your time. We'd like to speak with you again as quickly as possible. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you again.
Absolutely.
All right. We'll take the conversation to another very important conversation. As few African countries brace up for elections, Nigeria has seen how strong and effective the media and journalism space has contributed to the concluded 2023 general elections. Without a doubt, it can be agreed and it will be agreed that journalism plays a significant role in holding governments, businesses, and individuals accountable in the eyes of the masses and for the advancement of democracy.
And that is why the Center for Journalism Innovation and Development, CJID, through its inaugural West African Journalism Innovation Conference, will provide a platform for discussions on ways to explore innovations, technological models, and tools that can fortify journalism practice. This year's conference will be held under the theme Accountability Journalism, Nurturing Innovation for a Sustainable Future. Joining us to speak on this Breakfast Central is Akintunde Babatunde, the Director of Programs, CJID. Good morning, Akintunde. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. The last couple of weeks, months, maybe even years, there have been, of course, conversations on the struggle of journalism across Africa, with different, plethora of issues plaguing journalism. But of course, I like that the CJID is taking these steps. Let's talk about what this year's event is expected to cover and what we're expecting to see.
All right, thank you. And I'd like to say that when we talk of development and when we talk of advancing democracy, it is no gainsaying that the media is central in helping to get that happen. And at the Center for Journalism, Innovation and Development, we have over the years, developed models to help improve the media landscape in West Africa, because we are active in Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and the Gambia. And when in our work in all of these countries in West Africa, we've come to understand that the journalism profession is in crisis, and we thought that if we must improve that process, then it's important for us to think about the global changes and how that affects the practice of journalism. And that is why we have decided to set up, to launch the inaugural West African Journalism Innovation Conference. And what we are looking at as a broader theme would be to see how we can have conversation that would talk about innovations that are important to get on as a media. And we are looking at having conversations on how we can deploy technology to improve the practice of journalism. We are looking to showcase tools, the digital tools, the AI tools that newsrooms in Nigeria or in West Africa, they have been deploying over the years, and how they can show that to participants on how they can also learn about the tools and let that improve the work that they also do. We are also looking to let that conference be a convening point of media professionals, of tech companies, of policy makers, and of civil society organizations to come together and discuss how it is important for us to not just invest in the media, but to also develop a new sustainable business model that would allow the media to thrive. Because you and I you agree with me that for a media to effectively perform its function, then it has to be independent and it has to be economically viable. And that reality, the reality of COVID-19, the reality of digital disruption is affecting the business model that enables journalism to thrive. And if we must advance, independent media in West Africa, then it's important for us to think about being able to successfully evolve a new business model to come around and share their experience, so that evolving media platforms would also learn from that. And at the end of the day, we have a vibrant media in the West African landscape that is able to advance inclusive and sustainable development.
We've seen several conversations around the world concerning the media gagging. It's been seen as a known weapon used by African leaders. Very recently, we're talking about the patriotic bill in Zimbabwe and how, there are conversations about how that would affect journalists and their ability to report what is going on without being termed as enemies of the state. How important are these conversations? Also, even if we go to Ethiopia has celebrated its return to social media after 5 years. So let's talk about the importance of the freedom of the media, the freedom of journalists to be able to do the work that journalists do.
All right, that's interesting because we are starting WAGIC with an art exhibition for Monday, the 24th of July. And that the theme of the art exhibition will be to showcase oppressive realities of journalists, how journalists in the years have been attacked and also punished for just doing journalism. CGID, we have a press attack tracker that tracks attack on the media as it comes. And last year, total number of attacks against the media was around 50 to 60. And this year, and that's for the whole of last year. But this year alone, between January and May, we've recorded more than 70 attacks. And you ask yourself, why is this happening? Why should journalism be a crime? Why should holding government to account be, the ticket to death or to being in prison, right? So CGID would have the art exhibition to talk about attack on the press, and we also have panel discussions that would talk about how can we promote freedom of expression. How can we ensure that the journalism that holds government to account is free from oppressive regime? the environment upon which the media operates today in West Africa, we have seen a pattern where any critical media platform that tries to hold power to account or that tries to expose wrongdoing, they get sanctioned, or sometimes sanctions as a result. And you ask yourself, why should that be? Why should media organizations be slammed with fines just because they hold critical views? Shouldn't democracy be all about freedom of expression? So CGID would be hosting panel sessions to discuss freedom of expression in West Africa. We will be bringing experts from across West African nations to come talk about their experience. And then we are hoping that at the end of the day, because CGID is currently working with partners to develop sort of a press freedom framework, policy framework that would then guide how we can further engage government and policymakers on how the media should operate, in a free and a democratic state, right? So we are optimistic that WAGIC would usher in a new wave of discussion and insight as to how we can practice journalism in West Africa without fear of the state or its actors clamping down on the media.
Right. There's so much to talk about and explore, but we've run out of time. As quickly as possible, give us the details of this event. Where is it happening, and how can people be a part of it?
All right. So West African Journalism Innovation Conference, WAGIC, will be happening between the 24th and 26th of July in Abuja, at the Abuja Continental Hotel, former Sheraton. Between 6 to 8 p.m. on Monday will be the Hacked exhibition. We are excited about it because we have a lot of hard work that has shown the realities of press attack over the years. And on Tuesday and Wednesday, 25th and 26th, we will be having, conversation on the media practice, and that would be headlined by Richard Greengrass, the Vice President News, at Google will be coming around with the CEO, CGID, and Publisher Premium Times, that Yomi. We would also be having sessions, workshop sessions on digital tools for journalism, on innovative tools for fact-checking and verification. We will be having conversations on AI and journalism. That will be happening between Tuesday and Wednesday. We would also be having academic talk and sessions on curriculum of journalism in journalism schools by professors that are active within the journalism schools in West Africa. So we hope that people could join us online, join CGID Africa on Twitter. Then they will get details on how they could join us virtually, because we have about 300 delegates that have already been registered, that we've already approved the application to join us in person.
All right, Akintunde. I'm hoping that the event is really successful, and then we continue to develop on journalism across the continent and even beyond. And of course, people get to learn a lot. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And I'm hoping that we can speak with you right after the event, so you can also break down further details.
Of course. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Now, of course, it's been a very interesting last 2 hours here on Breakfast Central. Let's quickly share with you what comes up later today on News Central Television.
We have 1 p.m. Beyond the Continent.
At 5 p.m., it's Report Desk Africa.
9 p.m. West African time, NC Continental Prime. Thank you very much for joining us today. We hope that we have better news to share tomorrow. The naira has fallen to 850 naira to the dollar. We hope that by tomorrow it will not get to 900, that it will be better news. Hope that's all we have to hang on to.
It almost sounds like things fall apart.
Yeah, the center can no longer hold.
Something fun I was going to say, but yes, we wish, of course, everyone who's struggling with the current the cost of living.
Please rephrase.
Everybody is struggling. On individual levels. You're having your own struggles. So we wish you the best. We're also hoping that the current administration understands what is at stake and listens to experts, across the country, and puts politics aside and understands what's at stake. It's this thing that I would continue to talk about. I hope that they understand what's at stake and they know what to do.
I hope so too.
Absolutely. I am Osaogie Ogbonwa.
I am Olive Emodi. See you tomorrow.
Our youth are the most important national asset that we have.